In Washington, D.C. area, or Eastern Maryland, Ron Cooper is here. Welcome. And Fort Lauderdale, Florida, our keynoter, Philip Berry. Thank you again. And from Dublin, wonderful to have you. I'm so glad your schedule opened up. Joseph McGuire, facial expert. And here we are with face time. We better watch out. And Dr. Ken Lloyd in LA, San Fernando Valley. Welcome again.
Thank you.
This is about branding, rebranding, and marketing, public relations. Philip Berry and I have known each other since 1999, and he has spoken many times about so many products, all of them having to do with people and operations. And today, his focus is about crisis and how companies are being forced to change in order to maintain their position. Philip Berry, welcome.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much.
So the stage is yours, and following and intermittently, we will have audience and panel participation. Philip.
Okay, so let me try to share this. Okay. Um, I think I actually, what I want to do as I'm talking about this is to talk about change and talk about rebranding and innovation. And also I want to talk about AI. I'm going to mix all of those together. And so I have a lot of material in here. But what I wanted to do was just to introduce this, and maybe it'd be about 30 minutes, and then we'll see if we can finish at that time and then get into a discussion. So that's why we're here. That's what we're going to talk about. And really, I like to look at this whole topic from the standpoint of branding and rebranding, and talk about it from also the standpoint of innovation, an art of reinvention, and which is really important for leaders and individuals as they're looking at how to develop and navigate their identity, change, and growth in a world that is rapidly changing. And as I go through this, I also am going to put this into a historical context because some people just think that all of this is new. But we have, as a world people, we've been involved in these type of changes before, but we haven't had the vocabulary to help us to navigate it through it. And so that's why when we talk about branding, some people are so stuck on branding, but which is like who we are, but who we are, we are becoming from the standpoint of rebranding is really the most important feature. How do we transform the identity that we have for ourselves and for our business within this framework? And so therefore being able to put all of that together in terms of the aspirations that we have in our current reality for ourselves and also our products is really important. And so what I'd like to do is to look at it from the standpoint of three different functions that are really the hallmarks of rebranding in motion. And one of them has to do with what we call identity misalignment. And that is that the current brand that we have, and if we think about brand as the way we position ourselves from a standpoint of our values and our behavior, and how we are interacting with others and how people identify us within that framework. That really is what branding is. However, individuals are going to a point of where the brand that they had doesn't reflect who they are anymore and also who the organization is or that they are involved in and that they're aspiring to believe to create where they're aspiring to a whole new reality. And the second point to me is has to do with the disconnect that individuals have from the standpoint of who is my audience. And when I think about audience, I think about it from the standpoint of who is my customer? Or who are the individuals that care about who I am and what I do, and how is the present way that I am positioning myself with them, how does that reflect who we want them to be and who we want to be within that context? And it really has to do with looking at the cultural shifts that are taking place, general generational change, and also the market, which is really expanding. So all of those pieces, when we talk about change, they're in flux. They're not the way they were before. People are operating based on looking at the old brand, but that's not working for them. And so therefore, we also have to look at a defining inflection point, and that is where we're looking at the pivoting fundamentally from where we are now, from the old brand, and to a new brand. And to do that really involves looking at three critical factors when we are rebranding. And some people are saying, well, they aren't rebranding. But the fact is that the old brand is not working for them. Nobody is relating to them based upon they were positioning themselves before in terms of their product, in terms of their company, in terms of their organization. It's out of sync, and so people are wondering why whatever it is not working. It's because they haven't gone through a point of redefining who they are, and that's what rebranding has to do. And so therefore, the critical factors that we have to look at have to do with one, the whole issue of the relevance, because there are constantly changing features that are taking place in terms of who their audience is, the technologies that they're using, and also the markets. And I'm really going to blend in these all three of these factors later, but the fact is, and show you how we went through this before. But a brand that fails to adapt to the risk will become invisible or even worse, outdated. And so when you talk about why people have to do this, is because they're going to be outdated soon. Because everything is moving, everything is in flux except you. And so therefore rebranding keeps you in the conversation. And additionally, one needs to look at it from how do I competitively differentiate myself from the way I was before to the way I want people to see me now. So rebranding sharpens your unique position because there's a crowded landscape that's out there. A number of other people are coming into this, not only domestically, but internationally. I look at this in a global fact, in a global manner at any rate. Because if you're just looking at it from the standpoint of your individual country, then you really are losing already. So what you want to do is to signal some type of momentum and an ambition that is going to move you so that you're creating new value. And this is how you create trust because rebranding helps to rebuild the trust. It creates new awareness and accountability. And also, it outlines a clear new vision that people can rally around. We heard recently that Tim Cook just decided to retire from the position that he was in. But when you think about how he took over the company, and also as we look at what the new company is going to be, there's a heightened awareness that needs to take place from the standpoint of rebranding. And so, what some people are operating on is this old paradigm, feeling, well, Charles Darwin said, well, we can make this happen. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And so you can't stay the same. In business and in life, you really have to move forward. And if you don't move forward change yourself and adapt, and you have to do it within a framework, then you lose the context. Let me
So let
talk.
me jump in for a second, just for a
Mhm.
second here.
Sure.
There's so much confusion going on, and people, I know I am being bombarded by so much stuff coming in, and I just have grown upset, and I just block out as much as I can now so I can concentrate on one or two things. And this is what you're talking about. People don't have the bandwidth. They don't know who to believe or what to do. There's confusion.
Well, people are seeking, are thinking that they can operate on the old brand, that is the old paradigm, and think that they can survive in the midst of this, and they can see that they're not going to be able to. In fact, this next slide gets into that because history has been here before. This is not the first time this has happened to us in the world. Think about it from the standpoint of the 1440s with the printing press. Gutenberg came in and he really disrupted the way scribes and the church knowledge keepers were looking at things. And so the result of that was a renaissance, reformation, and the democratization of ideas. That's what happened. So this is not the first time this has happened. Additionally, move that forward from 1440 to the Industrial Revolution, where machines were replacing manual labor at a large scale. Societies were convulsed. Then emerged the railroads, modern cities, and explosion of economic opportunity. Well, this is what happened when you looked at the world from the standpoint of the 1760s to the 1840s. So that's why I'm saying what you're facing, people have faced before. And then think about this if you can remember the internet, the 1990s, the web dismantled entire industries overnight. Those who adapted built entirely new categories, whether it was e-commerce, social media, the gig economy, global connectivity. All of those are new words. So now we have to get into a point where we adopt and adapt ourselves to the new type of way we need to define ourselves. And that's what AI is doing right now. So that's why when we look at AI is beginning to replace the old way. Some people haven't even adapted to when I say the old way, people saying, well, internet, I haven't even learned that yet. How is that old? But we have to adapt and move forward because these type of things have come in place before. So that's the pattern. That is that every era of disruption rewarded those who rebranded their thinking, their skills, and strategies to meet the new reality head on. And so the challenge that you talk about is, and it requires people to adapt in a way that they never could before because they're operating in the old manner. Look at how rebranding, in fact, transformed. I'm just putting three examples in front of us just to show us how change can come about. And maybe not a few years ago, 1997, Apple Computer was weeks from collapse. But Steve Jobs came in, he stripped the everything back in terms of products, in terms of messages, identity, the whole think different campaign came into play, and Apple repositioned itself not as a computer company, but as a champion of creative and rebellious thinkers. I remembered at the time in 1990, that was when I first joined IBM. My first job, in fact, wasn't in human resources or in coaching. It was as a product scheduler in the area of computers and looking how you can put together certain types of computer systems so that it would please the customer in a certain way. And then within the clouds, you began to see companies like Dell come into play and certainly Apple Computer coming into play. People were buying a product, the iPhone, and They didn't even know what it was, but people were buying it in the millions, not only domestically but globally. The same thing that happened with Nike. Nike said, we are going to rebrand from an athletic gear company to one that is based on human potential. Think about that. That was what they were selling. So what they did was to anchor themselves into the whole issue of human potential and that everybody has an athletic within them. And so if they can do that, then they're going to be a new person. Just do it was the most powerful brand statement in history at that time. And then Oprah Winfrey came through as a TV host, and look at how she transformed a media platform and philanthropic force, and even into being a spiritual authority, across the board, so that people were looking at the information that she brought together and brought it within the reach of everybody. And so that's some of the things. Those are just three examples. I can think of a number of other ones also, but I just wanted to put those in front of you. But let me move to what I call, let's move into a strategic rebranding blueprint. And so I'm going to look at five different pillars. I'll start with four. The courage to reinvent is the next chapter that is in front of people. We have to understand that it's not an act of desperation, is an act of strategic courage. In fact, when you think about Globe HR News and what you're doing and what you were doing 1990 and how you have made that leap not because it was in desperation, but it was an act of strategic courage. And so now, what one has to think about for all of us who are on this webinar, you have to think about what is the strategic act that we need to create in order to move forward. And
I
so
want to
you,
say thank you, Philip, for
mm,
the audience. You were the inspiration back then to me to think bigger and move on from the relocation magazine approach to area economic development into a more holistic approach of aiding regional economic development. In other words, job creation and then the need to bring people in and then find them housing and get them productive right away. That's called the relocation industry. And what you told me to do is to find a way to go global.
oh,
And that's
exactly.
how we came up with the product name, Global HR, and then news.
Exactly.
Thank you.
No, no, no. Thank you. Thank you for that acknowledgement. And I think that the fact is that when you think about it, we have to have individuals know what their why is. I mean, anchor every decision into a clear, compelling purpose that makes sense. We have to tell the story boldly. That's what you're doing right now. That you're starting your own evolution, by looking at how we can tell this story, and that in every act that we make, has to be anchored in that. And then we have to also listen more to the audience. All of us need to understand who is our audience, what are they looking for, how do we use data to help us with this. And this is the magic, actually, of AI, because AI helps us to understand and listen better, because we're getting information in different forms. The only thing like if I break it down to the science, and that is that what people were doing before, they were using the internet in various ways in order to get information and to get to intelligence. Well, AI does that also. And that is how we help us to position ourselves for the long game. So it's a process, it's not an event. And the question is not to say, well, we'll never evolve, but what we want to do is to lead the evolution or be swept away by it. Let me go a little more detail into some of the 5 pieces that are key to this. And that is developing a strong sense of your core identity is important. So what I say to companies that are in the relocation business, and I relocated a number of individuals in the 60 countries that I had responsibility for from an HR standpoint. But what I did was I moved the paradigm a little higher to say, how can we move individuals who can understand the culture that they're working in, can get their families to adapt to that, and how can they differentiate themselves from other people who are working in the company. If you move from one place, how can you differentiate yourself so that way you go back to not to the company, company that you came for, or rather the country that you came from, but you are able to move to other parts of the world because you have differentiated yourself authentically in a way that makes you stronger. And we need to, as a result of these moves, we say to ourselves, well, what is the deep audience insight that we have? How can we research so that way we can understand the evolving needs that people have based on not their way of looking at the world, based on language, based on aspiration. The brand that ignores the audience is just a costume change. And then, thirdly, what we need to do is to have the competitive and cultural context understood so that we are able to really understand the white spaces, understand the landscape. What signals are competitors sending to us? So that way we can understand how to rebrand ourselves in a very distinct way and
What
move
do you mean
ourselves.
by white space, Philip? Excuse me for interrupting.
People know, people are always looking at this is where like sitting in language is so important. And that is that understanding what is that people aren't telling us, but how are they behaving that gives us some insight into what they really want and what they want to do. That's the white space. Like some people, and that's why it's so important to be able to distinguish oneself in the marketplace because we're looking at what are the dots, but what's in between those dots, and what is it that we can learn from that. And then, for example, I think of a situation where I was working overseas and in Brazil, and one of the things that we learned is that even though a lot of change that is taking place, not only in Brazil, but in a few other countries in Africa, where in Latin America, where cities were growing, what we forgot is that there are other places that people are existing and behaving, and they need products in those ways, and companies that can identify how to create products and get products to people, as opposed to feeling, well, they have to come to the major city in order to consume our products. Those companies that are understanding those white spaces are the ones that are going to be strongest. Another white space that people are beginning to think about, and this is where AI really helps us, and that is getting information about consumer behavior. And behavior of people is not just to have a phone where I can just talk to you and you can talk to me, but to understand the white space was that people want to also understand, they want to listen to music, they want to get research, they want to look at videos. All of those were white spaces that companies weren't looking at in the beginning. But then when they began to look at it, then you could see the products change because now we have an iPhone or an Android that has all the functionalities, multiple aspects of functionality, which were white space before. Now, with this product that I have right now, which is Meta, what Meta is looking at and saying, well, people don't necessarily like holding this device in their hand in order to communicate with somebody. They don't necessarily want to be able to listen to the music in that way. They don't want to hold it. They don't want to understand time. They don't want to have to go somewhere into a computer to understand something, and sit by a landline. These meta glasses help me to do all of that without moving from wherever I am. But it incorporates all of the functionality that I would be craving for into just a very one simple, small type of device. That's the white space. And then a rebrand also consistently looks at multi-channel execution because every touch point is important. um, visual, verbal, behavioral, all of those are touch points that individuals have to have with the consumer, whoever the consumer is, that we didn't have before. And then we have to have the type of internal alignment that we crave. That is that your team, your brand, all of the people who are in your circle, they have to believe that the brand will work before the world sees it, and become internal champions of the most. They become internal champions, and they are your ambassadors, to what
Philip,
you're doing.
behavioral. Define what you mean. Does that mean what I do?
What I do, what I think, how I express my values, for example, that and I my values help to determine what my movement is going to be, what my decisions are going to be, what I will like and not like, how I would like it, who I like, where I would like my product. It's all those are all of the pieces that you're looking at from that perspective. So
Thank
it's a,
you.
it's a multi, that's why I say it's a multi-channel way of executing what you want to do. And so sometimes what happens is that we're not reading all of the signals that are out there because we're not taking into account all of those features. I remember in working with a few companies, they were reluctant to adapt themselves to the internet because they were saying, well, the consumer is not going to go into social media in order to understand what our product is. They'll understand what my product is by going to the store. Well, what happened is that all of those companies started adapting themselves, and so they had individuals who were brand ambassadors in different ways by getting information from the internet that they couldn't get by just waiting to go to a store and watching brand movement of something. And now a, what AI is doing for us, in terms of helping us to understand and get data in ways that we couldn't get before. And as I move towards closing on this, I, I'm saying that the journey of rebranding really starts now. If every person that is on here can say, let me assess where I am today. Let me begin to look at the market opportunities that could come as a result of that assessment. How can I define a unique value dimension? How can I craft a compelling story and then execute with consistency and visibility? Very simple, 5 steps to rebranding. So that way, you also are ensuring that AI, for example, is your ally because you can continuously refine and elevate how the world sees you as a result of that. So those are the main pieces that I wanted to lay out. And then what I wanted to do was just to have a conversation. I wanted to do that in 30 minutes, which I think I did. And what I wanted to do was to have us talk about that within the context of this discussion.
Thank you very much. I want to introduce Andrew Ellerman, who joined us from a
Oh,
London area. I think you all
hi,
know
Anna.
him. So Andrew climbed Mount Everest and swam part of the English Channel and has done so many things for charity. It's wonderful to know you, frankly. So Why did you write the book? That's part of your branding, your rebranding, and to pull it together for yourself as well as for people to understand that perhaps they can motivate themselves to try something to break through. Andrew?
And you have to unmute.
There we go. Firstly, thank you for having me on the show. Philip, I love what you're saying. This morning, I was at an event this morning and it was all about AI. But actually, I wrote down what they were saying. It's redesigning AI to enable work with inclusion in mind. And I was blown away by the way they're saying, well, if you can bring AI in, how do you include people into this within your organization and what kinds of people? You have to include everyone, right? And inclusion's a big thing, a part of the D&I side of things. And it's just relevant that I've come on your show and all of a sudden you're talking about AI is the next thing that we need to embrace, but we also need to not ignore. I think I think from my perspective, it's either adapt or die, right? So and what you've just said was so relevant. It's good timing, I think, just coming onto that show. But going back to what you asked, Ed, because I don't want to hijack your show, because I think what
Yeah,
Philip's
don't
saying
worry.
is very, very important, very important. Yeah, I wrote the book 10 years on from the earthquake experience I had while trying to summit Everest.
Mhm.
And with things and changes that are happening right now, I just thought it was the right time to bring out my story because a lot of things that happened in my life in the last 10 years, not just climbing Everest and breaking a world record for the highest dinner party in the world and swimming in the English Channel, learning to swim at the age of 48, not because of that, but it things always got in the way of me trying to do those things. There was always things that, I joked. I remember joking and saying, I'm going to swim the channel. My wife was like, but you can't swim. And I was 48 years old and I was like, how hard can it be? I've just got to overcome my fear, learn to swim and get fit enough. I joked and said, it's not like I'm going to get caught in an earthquake like I did on Everest. Well, I got caught in a pandemic. So, I had to eat my words. But I think with when you're looking at like these things, what you're talking about, Philip, there's always curveballs. There's always things that come along, and you need to be prepared for those. We can't, AI is the next big thing. Well, it's not the next big thing. It's already here. It's already happening, right? And it's evolving on a daily basis. It's the quickest thing we've ever seen to evolve out of all those things that you showed on your page. But what's interesting is, you know, there'll be something else in the next 5 years. There'll be something far more greater than what we're talking about now, right?
Okay,
And
right.
you cannot see that because we live in the now, not in the future. And you can't do what you did in the past now, if that makes sense. So it's how do you adapt? How do you adjust? And how do you become resilient to a degree to take on these new tasks? So yeah, so thanks for inviting me on the show. I think I joined just at the right time as well. So,
Oh, it's wonderful to have you, believe me. And Joseph McGuire from Dublin, facial expert, negotiator, par excellence.
Yeah, I'm always inspired by listening to Philip, and I knew a little bit about Andrew's story, so I'll have to look at that in more detail because that's quite inspirational. And certainly, as somebody who can barely swim, I may need to take lessons. Um, but yeah, we are in we know we're in a time of unprecedented change, and certainly anybody in business needs to take AI on board. There's no question about it. Just a question of which models we use and how well we train them, and how well we retrain ourselves. And Philip is obviously talking about rebranding, and there's no question either that we have to rebrand because the world has changed so much, and I suspect the changes that are coming are going to be greater than anything we've seen already. And um, certainly in my own world, I'm seeing huge amounts of change in business, and like one area I was very much focused on was executive interviews, and that's just fallen off a cliff.
Mm,
completely fallen off a cliff because I'm seeing more companies firing than hiring. And a friend of mine recently posted on LinkedIn, actually 2 days ago, that she'd been hired by a company. She's been looking for work for a long time. She just posted that she's been hired by a company. And when I got off the internet, I just saw some news headlines that that particular company has now announced that they're firing 700 people.
mm,
So we need to be very, very adaptable. And AI is obviously an integral part of it because if we train it properly and if we're intelligent enough to use it in the way it can be used, it's going to be of immense value in cutting out a lot of tasks that could take a lot of time. It can make a lot of structural things happen a lot more effectively, a lot quicker. But I'm seeing also so many companies where they're paying lip service to taking AI on board, and certain sections of the company are taking it on, but often the higher levels, the CEO, C-suite, are not engaged at all.
mm,
And that's going to be problematic down the road. Well, so many CEOs are already reporting that they're burnt out because there's so much work and information coming at them that they're in
mm.
overload already. But if they don't embrace it fully, I suspect a lot of companies are going to crash, quite frankly. I'd love to hear other people's views on it.
Joseph, let me quickly ask you before we move on to Ron Cooper. Uh, is that person that you mentioned, was that person included in the firing? Or was he or she hired and kept because they knew the firings were coming?
I haven't messaged her yet to check that out. I'll be messaging her later. Um, I didn't want to dive into it straight away because I
Hmm.
thought it just might be a little bit too stressful for her, but I will be checking on her.
Ron?
I'm totally on board, Philip, with what you're saying in your presentation. I think there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind is as we rebrand, I think there's some things that about us that will never change, and that's values, our foundational principles on life, how we value people, and so forth. But the method in which we get that branding to people, obviously we need to adapt to whatever the methods are to get that out. I'm thinking of Andrew Elliman, whom we interviewed for our podcast just a few weeks ago, told us about the different things that he did and is thinking of doing. And I'm not being flippant in what I'm saying, but I mean it that Andrew could be thinking, well, who cares? Well, Andrew's target market cares about what Andrew's doing. He provides hope to people. Well, how can he get the message out to people? And what can he do to provide hope for people? And
All right.
the way he's marketing himself, the way the things he's doing that seem to be beyond human capabilities, well, that's providing hope to people. Andrew, I'm still in awe of what you do to get your message out in a charitable way to people who matter to you. Dr. Ken Lloyd, in a similar fashion, we need to rebrand that the way we do reviews, so the way people feel, the way people can know how well they're performing in a company that no longer an annual review. It needs to be virtually a continuous review, and it's relational. The way we adapt to people and let them know in real time that, yep, you're performing well, you're aligned with our values. And as we can choose to adapt innovatively to technology that's made available to us, how can we get the messaging out? And Joseph McGuire, as you are relating to people and as we're identifying with people and what we're going through, I think of in the context of values, our purpose, our mission and values and purpose and values and so forth. I try to determined of what I do, how many people would say, me too, I do the same things. Well, what unique value proposition do I provide to people? And I would hope that I can narrow that down to very few people would be able to say, me too. I provide a value to people that is very differentiated from others, albeit we share the same values. Somewhat of a long answer, Ed, to what Philip is saying, but those are some of my takeaways of what Ed is espousing, to what Philip is espousing.
Ron and Marty Cooper develop and run the cooperculture.com. Go check it out. Ron comes from a military uh, top level background, Top Gun guy, fighter jet pilot, 300 missions survived. The planes all came back too. It's a miracle, and you got a great story about branding and surviving and what it takes to get there. And Ken, how are you rebranding yourself as you go from the recent book into the next book that's not yet published?
That's a good question. I do want to back up just for a second and thank Philip for this presentation. I think this is a roadmap really for survival. Because if we don't get on this path and recognize the power and impact of AI, we're going to be left behind. And at any age, we have an aging population, and it's very easy to be looking backwards at the way things were done. And it's so wrong for people to be doing that. And your approach really says, look, here's the reality, here's what's going on, and here are the actions you can take to not just survive, but to thrive going forward. And you're not limited by anything but yourself. And we have artificial intelligence out there, but respect our own intelligence to do something with it and about it, to apply our intelligence to it. Look, we know in psychology, change is stressful. The greater the change, the greater the levels of stress. And that's part of the reason for some of the resistance to the changes that are going on in society and in the world today. But frankly, we have to recognize that, all right, it is going to be stressful. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to manage that? How am I going to really thrive with it? Because frankly, we all have stresses in our lives every day. That's normal. That's called life. And frankly, at the same time, if we have no stress, we have no life, literally and figuratively. So it's going to be there. Accept it, thrive on it, and use it to build yourself and build your brand and your effectiveness and your whole sense of self-worth and value. The opportunity is there. And Philip, you're giving people, again, a real good set of tools. Okay, how do I carry myself going forward? And it's an eye-opener. And I think that it's very important for people at all levels of an organization to hear what you're saying. Because it not only applies to their brand in the world of work, it's their brand in life. Who are you? Are you still stuck in some ancient era? And ancient now can be 5 years old, 5 years of the past. And you hear somebody saying, "Oh, I'm pretty technical. I use the Google." Oops, that's all you have to hear. Guess what? So the point being, very, very effective. And Ed, you had asked about the two books. The rebranding is a rebranding, as was just alluded to, of the process of evaluating, of performance evaluations. It's got to be rebranded from this ancient, archaic tool that throws people information about their performance over the past year, which is typically outdated, inaccurate, and downright annoying, to branding it as a tool that can help employee growth, development, and success, and the same for the organization. If we're talking about performance evaluation, here is an approach that actually will improve individual and organizational performance. So that's a rebranding of that approach as well.
Yeah, that's very true. Thanks a lot.
Philip?
One of the things that's so interesting when I think about my own career and how, matter of fact, when I was at Procter and Gamble, So I started in the area of leadership training and then organizational effectiveness. And but then I studied the audience and people that I wanted to relate to. And I learned that I need to, in order for me to be more effective, I need to understand a lot more about all the different aspects of human resources, compensation and um, diversity and how benefits. I mean, in order to be a fully functional resource to organizations, from my standpoint, I needed to have those skill sets. And also that was when I started doing international assignments and when I was at Procter. And then when I moved on to Colgate, I mean, I was doing it full-fledged. So I think about my my own career, what I did in order to I didn't know what to call it, but what I did know is that what I was doing wasn't sufficient enough in order to meet needs that I was seeing out there. And so to me, that's where you start, to look at the needs of the people that you want to address. And that's what I was trying to capture in the model that I had there. And then that helps you to go back and discover, like, what is my why? Who am I? And how can I make a difference and where can I do that? And then, you go back in an iterative manner to people who are your audience, whoever that might be, and then begin to make the changes that are necessary in order to bring about a successful way of looking at the world. Like the reason I just wanted to say those pieces is because sometimes we try to, just like you were saying, in fact, all three of you pointed the fact that we're in, there's going to be a continuous change that's taking place. And if we don't do something different, if we are hoping and waiting and hoping that it's going to go back to the old days, show me how to Google, as you were saying, I mean, as a way of getting information. We're losing. We've already lost because we're looking at it in from a behavioral standpoint, which is already antiquated. So how? No wonder we're not up to speed. And the last thing I want to say on that is this: is that there is a lot of talk that people have about jobs going away, but that's why I wanted to put into place like those three different points in time. Like when the scribes were republishing information in a different way in the 1440. I mean, nobody was looking at it like that, and then the Industrial Revolution brought about a whole different change. And so we're at a point where there's definitely a change that's taking place within the context of whatever job that we're doing. If we don't try to reimagine our job and value in a different way, then we're going to be lost. We can't just tell organizations, well, we're not going to do AA because jobs are going to go away. Well, I think that those of us who are thinkers, advanced thinkers about this, we need to help organizations to rethink how they can utilize the skills of people in a different context, as opposed to the context that the old way that they were doing that job. Like one small thing I'll just say about that. I remember working with some people in the marketing area. And and in order for people, so we would hire marketing people, but then in order for marketing people to really understand their job, they had to become commercial people. They had to be like salespeople. They needed to understand a lot more about how the market is moving. So that way, when they would go back and market and create commercials or whatever they're going to create, it's because they had a firsthand look at what was happening with people's behavior in the marketplace. Like I remember that when I would go on what we used to call them budget reviews, and a number of you probably been on those. You're part of the senior team, and what you're going to the country and doing a review, about how their products are doing and what's the move, what's sales like in this particular area, how we doing market share. I used to go, our team would go to the supermarket first before we had those meetings. So that way we could see what was happening in the stores, and how people were making decisions about things. So then we could go back and then everything made sense in that way. So we've lost the context of staying in touch. And I think that's something that and in fact, in line with that, when I was just reading 2 days ago an article about Tim Cook and saying what was the most important re- inf intervention that you made when you think about how the products were moving. He said the first thing that I would do in a day, I would read all of the customer feedback that was coming in and listen to what customers were saying, whatever, see, good, bad, and different. I would listen to that. Then I would go out and I would make the changes based on that. Well, that's how he grew. That's how he grew the company, from 30 whatever million to so many billion, because he was listening to the customer. That's how we do it.
Okay, so now let's talk about companies as a learning center, a university, if you will, to teach new skills. It doesn't matter what my college degree was in 45 years ago. So, what skills do I have right now that will help the company, whether it's my own company or your company? Skills learning and then application. Philip.
I mean, certainly there are new skills that come about. I think that's where we have to study what are the needs that people have in terms of how they're approaching their work and their task and their activities. And then look at, I think the most important skills are skills, that you can combine a way of looking at the world and looking at work, and looking at how you are functioning within that framework and to see if is there something that's different that I need to apply. And that's why I like interdisciplinary type of training that would take place on the university level, because universities that do that, in fact, I just was appointed to a committee committee with I started out in community college. So before I got my two master's degrees, I started in community college, and I went back to that community college and was looking at the role that this particular college, Manhattan Community College, was looking in training professors and also training students who wanted to have international assignments. So I was appointed to this committee looking at how we can reimagine the curricula and also the type of jobs that people would go into based on that. And so we're going to go about that, but with a whole new endeavor to reshape a number of the ways, to your point that you're raising, to reshape the curricula and also to help students. Matter of fact, I think it's important for students, like they said, well, people are going to international assignments. And so they got a lot of money to do international assignments. And so then what I lectured to them on is that how can you take an international assignment and turn it into a global career? So not just go into a country and say, oh, I went to Paris, had the Champs-Élysées, I like this and that, all the things that people fantasize about when they go to different places. I went to and in India, Taj Mahal, all of you know better, as well as I do. But how can you therefore go back after your international assignment and then say, what other courses do I need to learn about? So if you went over to the England or the UK or whatever, how can you learn about the whole landscape that was taking place on that whole aspect of the continent, historically? How can I understand the history of that area? So that way I can really appreciate why things are set up. How can I understand art and the type of art that came about? How can I understand the reading that took place? People need to understand this before they get into all this other stuff.
Ron Cooper, tell us how you and Marty Cooper are designing workplace changes while keeping a psychologically safe environment for discussion and skills, upskilling, reskilling?
I think to incorporate what Philip is saying and a lot of the overall tenor of this conversation is the concept of innovative thinking. And as we are engaged in innovative thinking, we want to be hungry to learn. And if I have created a culture where I encourage innovative thinking, which from my way of thinking, not every innovative thought is going to be successful or warrant moving forward. I need to create a culture that not every idea is going to go forward or will be successful. So we celebrate, so to speak, failing, but we're failing forward. What did we learn from whatever didn't work correctly? And as we learn together and as we have a psychologically safe culture, we can learn from each other. And that sharing of information needs to necessarily be a part of a culture to where I'm not threatened by you, Ed, or anyone else on this program. By sharing information with you, I don't feel that I am threatened by you someone advancing you beyond me. But I'm a long-term thinker. I am a globalist type thinker. What is good for the company I'm working with? What is the greater good of everything that I'm thinking? But as I have developed as a leader a culture to where I can engage people in innovative thinking, and together we're all advancing with the concept that, yes, what do my customers need? I want to help create that innovative thinking, and I want to be very perceptive of and likely many of my customers will not be able to even articulate what they need, but I can, through conversation with them, developing trust, I can help them articulate what their needs are, because I'll make known to them I use the term frequently, what the art of the possible is. And Philip Berry, for example, well, what do you think? I think meta glasses would help you. To which I might say, I have no idea what meta glasses are even. And so, as we think together what the art of the possible is, we learn with each other. And I think, well, yeah, constantly, now that you mentioned that, maybe that is what I need. But Ed, that's a part of the culture that Marty and I help create various businesses to establish. And when we have that innovative thinking, a psychologically safe culture, we all benefit because we're working together as a team.
So, Philip, how do
Yeah.
you prompt your meta glasses? Do you blink?
Hey, Meta, take a photo.
Just words. Yeah.
If you saw that, there was a little blink over here,
Yeah.
and I took a picture.
Wow,
That's
that's
how
interesting.
this is just like you asked how to prompt it. The
So, as we
last,
come to a close in the next few minutes,
I'll give you my last two words.
yeah,
I know we're closing. Once
in a few
less than a
minutes.
sentence that I would say based on what Ron brought up, and that is that John Nesbitt, a futurist, said that the world doesn't belong, to those who are the biggest, the most intelligent people. The future belongs to those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is what brings about the future.
All right, that's interesting. Okay, so Ken and Joseph, this term that Gemini fed to me is relationship capital. Ken, what does that mean to you? And then Joseph, and then everybody.
To me, it's in a word, it means the additional value that is accrued by building strong, bona fide, honest relationships with the members of your team. And it's worth more than just having a group. If you have an actual relationship, there's something much stronger and generates far more positive and measurable results, hence capital. That's how I would see it.
Joseph?
Yes, I do wish I'd had my hair done for Philip's photo, but he'll warn us next time.
Yeah, Ed, I'll send this to you in the text when we get out of the
Oh, well,
meeting.
great, great.
Yeah. It's being produced as we speak.
Andrew, I love your slide from years ago where you were tra traipsing up
Seven
Everest.
steps, seven
Somebody
steps.
took that picture, but not with a meta glass, I'm sure, at that time. But there you were with this big, heavily backload thing and the 7 steps of survival. I know you're not prepared to talk about that right now, but you lay out in detail what it takes to plan a major thing. And this is what people need now, in
Yeah,
summary of
Yeah,
what everybody's been talking
completely.
about. People need to know what to do and when and how. And
Completely. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. It's been really interesting. And when we were talking about AI, I have to say, you hear so many people saying, if you don't jump on the AI bandwagon now, you'll be out of a job in 5 years, etc. And AI is going to replace your job if you're not careful. Well, I don't look at it that way at all. And I think it needs to have a positive spin on it to get people to understand what AI really is. So take my job, for instance, like my job, I'm busy from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed. If you work in global mobility, you work all hours, right? So rather than look at AI replacing my role, what I look at is like, how is AI going to help me to take away all those bits that get in the way in the daytime
yeah,
to allow me to do my job efficiently and
exactly.
correctly?
That's
And
it.
and there was an example. I'll use an example. It's not my example. I saw it on YouTube. If you YouTube it, you'll see it. It was a TED talk, and there was I come from a sales background, so I help companies to well, I help the company I work for to produce sales with the teams. But there was a guy in America that got on stage and he blew me away with what he said. And he said the average salesperson does 90 minutes of sales a day. Like, and I thought that's got to be rubbish. I start in the morning, and I don't finish till late in the evening. But what he did, he broke it down, and sales for him was face-to-face meetings, whether it's on screens or whether it's in person. But the interaction you have directly with someone, like we are now, is the most important part of your sales process because it's when you might get a yes. You're more likely to get a no. Be realistic, but the no's will lead to a yes, right? So 90 minutes a day. Now, he did this study across many different organizations, and every organization did a study within their company, and it worked out 90 minutes per day that they did actual face to face sales. The rest of the time was
Yeah.
research. The rest of the time was getting proposals out. The rest of the time was putting
Right,
costing
right.
together.
That's
Like
how I do it.
now, he had, I think the company was, I won't say the name of the company because that's probably wrong of me to say, but he said this company, very big organization, you all know the name. They came to him and said, over the last 5 years, our sales has gone down, 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 down. And we are looking to scale back, get rid of some of our sales team because it's just not working. And he turned around to them and said, you're looking at this wrong. It's not your salespeople that are failing. It's just the time that they're getting to do sales. And he told them they're only doing 90 minutes a day. And they said, oh, that's rubbish. So they did a month trial, come back, and it was right. They were only doing 90 minutes. So he said, right, okay, free them up the time to do 3 hours a day and see what happens. A year later, they made more figures than they'd made in the last 5 years because sales had an option to get in front of people to talk. Now take this to AI. What I'm thinking is if AI can do a lot of the things that I get in my way of getting on screens and talking to people, imagine if I could use AI to take that away, an amount of extra time I get in front of people, my sales will go through the roof. So it's how you look at AI and how you position that to, rather than think, oh, that if I'm not careful, that's going to replace my job. Maybe I need a different job. No, just look at how it can enhance your job, make your job slightly easier, but also give you the time to do your job correctly. That's what I would say.
Reading the white spaces. That's what he's talking about. That's great. I have to go and I have another meeting, unfortunately. But this is a great conversation. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. And
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing all of you again in another podcast. Thank you so much.
Please
Thank
come
you, Philip.
back. Thank you
Okay.
all.
Take
Thank
care.
you, Ron. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ken. Thank you, Andrew. Philip,
Yes, definitely.
magnificent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We're going to want to go
all.
deeper on some of your points, Philip.
Yes, definitely.
So I need you to come back.
Okay. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Okay, ciao.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.